Hi everyone. I'll do a bit more of an intro in a minute, but you'll have seen from the promotions and the advertising and stuff. So this is about enablement, and you'll see from that poster. So it's journey to the center enablement. So just like the films, there's some scary stuff that happens. There might be dinosaurs. There probably isn't dinosaurs featuring in this one, but there'll be stuff that's hopefully unexpected that you can learn from. Chuck all the questions in there as we go, and either I'll pick them up if they're in with the flow, or can pick them up afterwards, or even follow up here with you if they're a little bit more in depth. So just going to leap in and do a bit of an introduction. So who am I? I think I've met some of you before, but certainly not all. So I'm Simon Owen. I've been in the Power Platform world for, I don't know, 5-6 years now. It's been quite a while. I've done a bit of speaking, but not for a little while, so you may not have seen me speak. I've started blogging just the last 3 or 4 months or so about empowerment and adoption. So you might have seen my blog, and I'm an accidental organizational change troublemaker. That's something that I thought today. So I'm not organizational change trained. I don't have any qualifications, but I've been through a load of this stuff, and certainly with the Power Platform. So I'm going to bring some of that to life for you today. So work history wise, I work for Avanade at the moment, been there for 2 years. I'm part of the Global Power Platform Centre of Excellence. And a lot of what I do is to help our customers establish the governance and guardrails. And more these days talk about, well, how do we now start getting some value out of the platform? How do I grow adoption? How do I enable the organization to use it? So that comes from a real world job, so not consultancy. So before Avanade, I worked for GSK. I was in the pharmaceutical world for 16 years, all sorts of different roles. So I was a production operator making HIV tablets for a while. I was a supervisor and a manager in that area. I did some SAP data management. I did some process improvement, and I moved into IT about 10 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer now. And that was straight into this factory world. So it was manufacturing and supply chain I was focused on. And it was a big factory. It was an important factory. So GSK's massive global pharmaceutical company, about a quarter of its revenue went through this factory. So about £7 billion worth of revenue went through the factory. And as part of that, it had been there for 100 years, more than 100 years. So you can imagine that there were some really old processes. There was loads of stuff still on paper. There was some old equipment, but equally there was some state-of-the-art brand new stuff. So all of the data we could possibly want from those, none of the data that we wanted from the others. So in the last few years that I was there was a great big digital transformation project, and I was the IT lead for it. And what we were looking at was a digital factory. So how do we want to operate in the future to make sure that we've got the right mindset, we've got the right skills, we've got the right tooling and technology in place? So that was looking at things like virtual reality, augmented reality, digital workflows, getting the data out of lines, presenting it to people to make decisions at the right time to do their job. And a big chunk of that, purely by accident, I stumbled across the Power Platform and found that we had it available to us in the organization. So that led to me becoming a Power Ranger for 3 years of my time there. Now, I didn't look quite like that in the suit, but the reason it was the Power Ranger was I thought, oh, well, I don't really know how we use these tools. I don't know where to use them. I don't know who should use them. Need to experiment a little bit. So I thought, okay, well, I know a few people who are kind of, they're data savvy. They know the problems in their area. They've spread across the factory floor. I started an email. So Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, said, hello, Power Rangers. And I just threw it away, just a throwaway joke. But actually it stuck, and that became our brand of what became a community within the organization. So those initial 8 people grew into, over the space of 3 years, grew into a community of 4,500 across 70 countries, all levels of the organization, recognition up to C-suite, relationships out into Microsoft, into the product team, right up to Charles and Ryan and James at the time. So organizationally, it changed the world. It gave these people a different way of working, a new set of skills. And it changed my world because it moved my career into a completely different direction that I didn't expect. So it's transformational. With these tools, with this platform, we can transform the world. But it's not just the technology that does that. We can't just put it out there and it changes the world accidentally. It might happen in a few cases, but actually the technology is sometimes hard, but that's usually the easy bit about empowerment and about adoption. So the way I've described it here is that 80-20 mix. 20% get the platform in, get it safe, get it secure, work out how we're going to manage environments and connectors and all that kind of traditional stuff. 80% is, well, how do we work with those governance people who already exist? How do we work with and find those existing or potential makers? How do we start influencing their leadership to recognize that there's a different way of working? So we can think about this as we talk a lot about a center of excellence. And you might have seen Mark Smith's blogs just fairly recently talking about this concept of center of excellence versus center of enablement. So if we think about that center of excellence piece being the technology and how we set it up, how we make the connectors available, how do we use telemetry to see what's going on, how do we put the right governance and guardrails around things, make sure everything's secure, focus on data privacy. The other side is that center of enablement. So it's a different set of skills, and sometimes they're all in the same people. Sometimes they're not, and we need to go and think about, well, who do we need involved? And more commonly, it's that organizational change management set of skills. So you'll see from this picture, there's a few different things that we're going to touch on today. So that center of enablement is really about inspiring people. It's about attracting them to the platform, helping them understand, well, why should I even be interested in this? What does it matter to me? It's about trying to educate them and help them understand, well, how do I take those first steps? How do I take those second and third steps? It's about coaching them and make sure that they're successful. It's about recognizing that bravery of taking those steps and celebrating those successes. And it's about connecting people. Community is the thing that holds all of this together. So we're going to start by thinking about that COE part and just kind of remind you, well, what do I need to consider whilst I'm setting that up? And we've got to reflect on not all solutions are the same. I think you might have seen some posts on LinkedIn about shitty little apps recently, and actually describing citizen developer apps as not being all that good or useful. That may be true, but it depends on the lens that we put on them. So what I've tried to show here is that some of those very small solutions, it might just be for me, might be a bit of automation to make my life easier. Now that's meaningful, it's valuable, it's important. But if we look at the other end of the scale, these are enterprise scale apps that might be business critical. They might be integrated with our core business systems. They might be processing personal information, very different scale. So the way that we govern these things is different. We shouldn't be letting our newly starting citizen developers create enterprise scale apps that are business critical. And we can control that through the way that we approach that COV pace. So if we think about that scale, we can start putting things into different buckets, into these different t-shirt sizes. And by thinking about, well, what are the criteria that I can describe a small versus a large or an extra large, we can think about the things that are important to us. So that is things like data classifications. Is it personal information? Is it sensitive? Is it critical? Business criticality. So if it fails, is it going to bring down the whole organization? Is it going to impact my KPIs? Or is it just going to slow somebody down? So we can map a number of those criteria to describe what those different sizes are. And then we can put our environment strategy on top of that. What connectors are we willing to accept people to use? What governance processes would we expect them to go through? So that's our foundation. This is the way that we can enable people to do some things, but not do everything. So that's our baseline. What we want to do now, we've got that safe and secure platform. We've opened it up for people to start using. Now we want to empower people. So what we're going to do is to think more about, well, how do I bring that to life? How do I think about what empowerment looks like? What does that value look like? And I'm just going to do it. There's no audio on this. I've not shared audio, but I'm just going to talk over it. Now, this chap in the middle here, he's our citizen developer. So he's happily dancing there on his own. He doesn't know that there's anybody else out there. He started creating an app to solve a business problem that's important to him. Now, this is his mate that sits next to him. He's showed him what he's done. He's shared that app with him, and he's well impressed. He's managed to create something that now both of them can have on their phone that makes both of their lives a bit easier. And it doesn't stop there. Those people have friends as well. They start telling them about it and show the things that they're doing. And those friends, in a moment, will also start to join the party. So they'll also suddenly know, okay, well, I've heard about Power Apps or Power Automate or whatever, whichever tool it might be. I've seen the path that this guy has gone on. I've seen how he does it. He seems to be having fun doing it. He's getting recognition. I want a bit of that. I want to give that a try as well. So those friends then tell other friends. Slowly that momentum starts to build. So our citizen developers are starting to clump around. They're not necessarily all part of the same team. They're telling their friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. That reach is spreading across the organization, and more people are starting to join in. We're starting to develop that movement. We're starting to kind of increase the number of people who are learning the platform. They're building the solutions. They're solving these tiny business problems that otherwise might get left behind. And what we'll see is that team, that community just gets bigger and bigger. And you'll recognize this from kind of the people we connect with across LinkedIn or the people that we see at conferences time and time again. These are our friends. These are our colleagues. We are perhaps that shirtless dancing guy. You see, it gets to crazy levels of engagement and empowerment. They're all doing the same thing. They're all doing it slightly different, but they're all doing it in the same place. They're doing it together. They're making a difference. They're feeling that value of having fun and making something special. So yeah, you'll see. So that's what we're trying to create. So that's the opportunity we've got with building a community around the Power Platform, or any other tools really. So this is an approach that could be applied to anything. So you'll see there's a couple of links at the bottom there. So first follow is that video that we've just seen. There's a real life example of that. So that GSK story that I mentioned, I presented a few years back, and most of the story at least, you'll be able to have a look at how that same community grew in the same way and some of the techniques that I used there. So I really don't know how this will go. So I thought we could do an experiment, and I don't know how well it works virtually, and we're not going to all take our shirts off and start dancing, but some of us, I think, are at home. I'm guessing some of us might be in the office. So it might take a little bit of bravery. And what I thought I'll try when I do this similar presentation in real life is actually to try and get people to do something a bit fun. So our experiment is that we're going to try and do a Mexican wave. So every time I start the Mexican wave, I'm hoping some of you do it. You might be on camera, you might not be on camera. If you're not, even better. If you're in the office, that's even more fantastic, because I'd love to hear whether people around you start kind of looking at you weirdly and perhaps even join in. That's the true test of this being a successful movement or not. So there's a few people on camera, so we're just going to test it first of all, just with you. If anyone else wants to come on camera, that would be awesome as well. But I'm just going to do a Mexican wave every now and again through the presentation. I see a few people joining in. Perfect. Excellent. If you're in the office, come on camera and do that as well. That would be awesome. So we talk about value. The value for that shirtless dancing guy and his colleagues, his friends, even the people didn't know to start with. about having fun. It was about kind of just doing what felt good. Now, if we're in the office, if we're in an organization, it doesn't quite work the same way. When we talk value, when we talk Power Platform, a lot of the time people think, oh, okay, well, what solution are you going to build? How much time is it going to save? What's the cost of the licensing? How's it going to improve the quality of your output? All that kind of stuff, the kind of traditional business case type measures of value. Now, we saw from the dancing guide, we've got different types of value we can think about as well. So every one of those makers, those citizen developers, they're getting value, but it might be different value. Yep, there'll be a little time saving for the thing that they've created for them, or maybe their three friends, but actually that doesn't really scale to pay for a great big enterprise deployment, not on its own at least. So we can think about the value to them as people. So they're starting their own development journey. They're owning that. They're empowered to do that. They're learning new skills for the future. They're making their work more interesting. They're automating some of that rubbish stuff that they don't enjoy doing. So there's some examples there that we can start talking about that value, but equally we can start telling stories around that value as well. Now, if we also think about people, but from an organization perspective, there's a load of stuff here as well. So slowly, one by one, 10 by 10, hundreds by hundreds, we're changing the behaviours of the organisation. We're changing the way that people look at problems and think data first, of what data do I need to get or create to solve that problem in a different way. So we're changing the way people think. We're changing the way that they're acting. By encouraging them to share with others, we're making leaders out of them. They might not have people reporting into them, but they're thought leaders. They're influencing the behaviours of others as well. Now, if we start promoting that internally and externally, suddenly it's a more interesting place to work. It's a more empowering and exciting place to work. So perhaps we improve the retention of people who might be looking to leave the organisation, give them something else interesting to get involved in. And if we communicate it outside of the organisation, perhaps we interest other people who might not have been interested in our organisation previously. So there's a whole lot of organisational people value there that we're not necessarily tapping into or telling stories around. And the last part is to the value to the IT organisation. So by pulling some of these people out of their Excel sheets or Access databases, bringing them into the Power Platform, well, we're shining a light into that shadow IT world. We're starting to get visibility of what they're doing. We're lowering the risk of the organisation. Equally, all these shitty little apps, that gives us some visibility of, well, what are those problems that are interesting to the organisation that the IT group, they just don't even see. It's those small problems that perhaps every single person in the organisation is trying to create a automation to do something. Well, rather than them all doing it all at once, that gives us visibility of what should go into our IT roadmap. It gives us some insights on where there's value that we can provide to the organisation. But equally, as an IT function, it also gives us a set of tools that we can use to rapidly prototype, to lower our risk by moving off of legacy systems. There's all sorts of stories of value that we can tell and we can help people with. And if we think about that storytelling, we've got different functions within an organization. So we've got folks who are interested in purely the financials or primarily the financials. We've got operational people, we've got quality people, we've got R&D people, we've got HR. All of these people, they've already got strategies, they've already got KPIs that they're measuring against. There's value types here that we can enable, which feeds into what they're trying to do already. So by thinking about and talking to those groups, we can understand what are their needs like. How do we kind of double up? And the things that we're doing, how do we share that value back up with them so that they can be our sponsors, they can be our sounding boards, they can influence their networks to start people on that journey too. But that top-down piece, that sponsor alignment in the functions, it's not always enough. So we can think about how a traditional change approach might work in that context. So something that's pushed down through an organization, perhaps it's migrating to Teams, maybe it's moving from on-premise SharePoint to SharePoint Online, something that everybody has to get involved in. We set a strategy, we set a vision, we set maybe some pilot groups off, we teach them how to do it, we get some feedback. We take their learnings, we improve our approach, we create some standard documents, we might create some training, maybe some change agents through the organization, and then we look at how we scale. That's traditionally kind of how we do a lot of change. It works really, really well for a lot of scenarios, but it's not the only way. We've got some other options as well. So if we think about a potential failure point, so we've set a direction on where we want to do, what the change is going to be. We've designed what that looks like. We've started testing it through a level of the organization. But as we start to scale, actually, there's people that aren't bought into the change, and they're at different levels of the organization. The higher up the organization they are, the less they're going to influence the people underneath them to do that change, to go on that journey, to understand where the value is, why is it important. So unless we can address all of those failure points, we're not going to get full saturation. We're not going to get that change. And it's even more difficult where this is an opt-in change. This isn't something that we're enforcing everybody to use. We're showing them the value and we want them to use it. We can't make them. So if we think about what that might look like from that dancing guy perspective, a bit different. So because we're not going down the organization legs, we're talking to our colleagues who may be in other functions, in other countries, in other locations, and it spreads out more organically. So this is difficult to manage, but it's something that we can encourage and then monitor the results of, rather than manage the nuts and bolts of how that change happens. So if I just put a bit of structure around that for you. So if we think about that top-down change, we've got that organization strategy. We need some transformational leadership who recognize what Power Platform could do for them. We need to create an environment of psychological safety where people aren't afraid to go off and experiment. Those solutions that they build, they may not work. They may waste time. They might create the same solutions that other people create, and that would be waste because it's duplication. What we're trying to do here is to foster a culture where people are happy to experiment, that duplication isn't waste in all concepts. It's actually learning, investing in learning, building those skills so that those shitty little apps, doesn't matter whether it works or not, doesn't matter whether it's going to kind of change the balance of how the organization works or the balance sheet of their profit and loss, doesn't matter. It's actually about that stepping stone to building more and more complicated, more and more valuable things. And we can look at it from that bottom-up perspective, that actually the likelihood of us cascading a change like that and changing the culture, it's really hard. So if we think about trying to do it from the bottom up, actually find those people who are willing to experiment, go out there, and then using them to slowly build our way up through the organization. It gives us a more organic approach, perhaps slower at the start, but actually greater visibility as we grow. So what we're trying to do is to give the safety to that one person rather than the whole organization, so that they go out there, they feel enabled, they feel supported to go and use those tools. Then we share their story, we share the solution that they've built. We share how they've learned, we share what they've done. We leave those breadcrumbs so that other people can follow that same path. And piece by piece, we start to create this thing called viral change. So the thing that we saw with the dancing guy at the beginning. And the reason I put a little asterisk in there is just, it must be about 9 months or so ago now. When I was in GSK, we used this term viral change as how it was happening, what was going on in the organization. What I found 9 months ago is actually this guy, Dr. Leandro Herrera, he's written loads of books. It's like a decades old theory of his, and a way that his consultancy does business change around the world. So he's fine with us using the term, but they did ask for me to put a reference there just to communicate that link. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see that journey that I described. So finding those highly connected people is how he describes it. I don't think they exist to start with in all cases. So those Power Platform experimenters, part of our goal is to try and make them highly connected. So for me, that's telling their story. It's amplifying the reach that they've got. It's improving the recognition of the amazing things that they're doing through that storytelling piece. We can promote that story of who they are, what they do, how they've done it, how they've been brave doing it, what lessons they've learned, all that kind of stuff, as well as the solutions that they've built. And we can use those to inspire others to start that journey as well. By doing that piece by piece, using traditional comms channels, as well as using that community and pointing people back into it, we can increase the visibility of what people are doing, how they're doing it, and inspire and excite people to go on that same journey themselves. And then that delivers our strategy if we're aligned from that vision perspective. Now, to put a bit of a model around it, it started using Make a Movement as the framework really on how this happens. You'll see it's circular. So generally, it would be great if we started at the leader and get their influence from the beginning. It's not always how it works in the real world. So when we're brought into an organization to help them, often there is a leader who's done that, but they may not be at the top of the organization and be able to influence everything. They might be a little bit further down. So let's start with people in this case. They're our first followers. So ShortList Dancing Guy was there. They're the people we're looking for. We're trying to encourage those first followers in. We want to inspire people, excite people, make them kind of get out of their comfort zone and join us. Then we want to educate them. So we want to give them that base level of skills. Well, how is the platform set up? What's the governance? What can I do? What can't I do? We want to make that easy for them to start, but equally, well, what's the maker experience? How do I use the portal to start building stuff? How would I design data? Let's help them understand some of those basics, and then they can solve problems. So helping them recognize, well, what is that first problem in my life that I can solve? Help them find those. Help them recognize, well, how do I map the process? How do I understand my customers' needs? How do I design the data that sits beneath that? How do I build my app? How do I build my flow? Holding their hand through that first one so that they get that massive buzz of that first occasion that you end up with your own app on your phone or on your desktop. We want them to feel that. We want them to come back for more. And we want to communicate that. So we want to celebrate it. They've been brave. They've stepped outside their comfort zone. They've done something off their own back. They've owned their own learning journey. Let's shout about that. Let's make them feel loved. Let's help the world recognize that they've done something special. And that app that they've created, excellent. It's solved a really small problem, but it solved it. So other people can solve it too. We want to celebrate all of those things. Now, equally, it might be celebrating a leader who said, this looks amazing. Actually, I want the rest of my team to start learning how to use this platform. Great. Let's drive some competition between people. Let's get that influence of envy, driving people to do things and encourage things that perhaps they might not have done previously. And we want to share that. We want to share it broad. We want to share it wide. We want to share it deep. Try and get as much visibility of what's going on as possible to the biggest audience so that they can see these special things, these different things that are happening in their organization. And these things come back and then start influencing those leaders. So if I see that one of my colleagues is actually getting kudos for enabling his team to do something really special, I'm going to want some of that. I quite like a bit of kudos, actually. Yeah. Maybe I can follow his path. Maybe I can follow her and understand, well, how did you go about it? How did you learn about it? They're the kind of culture, that's the kind of culture we want to establish, that knowledge was power, but actually the sharing of knowledge is power now. We want people to share that journey, share how they've done it, so that others can be successful as too. It's that whole culture of the community that we're in as well. And because it's circular, this is a little bit of a destructive example, but we want to keep going around and round and round, growing that community, growing that impact, growing the people who are aware, growing that knowledge and capability. And just like a Twister, we want huge impact, but obviously in a more positive way. Now, just to end, I think like Donna Sarkar always has, she always gives homework at the end of her presentation. So I thought, yeah, I'll do that. I'll give some homework. So ideally, I want you to go out there and try some of this stuff, experiment a little bit, be that shirtless dancing guy, be the first follower if you see someone else doing something interesting. And although we've been talking about Power Platform, I spoke to one of my colleagues earlier today and we thought, oh, the principles are the same across all sorts of stuff. Let's do the same with Gen AI. Let's do the stuff with your career. Let's think about how you influence others to recognize your value. Can use this stuff across anything. It's not just Power Platform specific. And share with others. Get on calls like this. Share your knowledge, share your passion, influence others and broaden their horizons, broaden their knowledge as well. And the last bit, just get in touch if you got any questions or if you need any help, and have fun. So hopefully you found that interesting. There were some different ways of looking at things and thinking that you might not have encountered before. But yeah, happy to take any questions or anything really. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. That was awesome. I love the diagrams. Excuse me.
It's how my brain works. I think I used to think a lot on PowerPoint and drag around slide decks, and it just took forever. So I started doing just scribbling pictures on OneNote and dragging things around, scribbling stuff out, delete this, add that. And then with the goal of then converting that into a PowerPoint to share. But I started just sharing the diagrams because it was easier for me, but also it seemed to people seem to quite like it as well. So I've used the same style in my blog too.
Yeah, no, definitely. It makes it quite relatable, doesn't it? Because you can sort of see how your mind's working by looking at that diagram. It's very much how I like to learn.
Yeah, and I think the other important bit is that these are just ideas. They'll evolve. They're experiments, and by having them hand drawn, it kind of shows that none of this stuff is set in stone. We're all learning as we go, and we're all evolving the things that work, and we're learning by experience. So I like that it shows that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when dealing with people, and that's the sort of big focus of this, isn't it? It's people change and they want different things, and you have to be flexible with that, I suppose.
Definitely.
Does anyone have any questions or comments at all? No? Just check the Q&A. I don't think it led to anything questionable, if I'm honest with you, from kind of looking at it. I was thinking along the way, what is there? But it was pretty much a tutorial, really. Made a lot of sense.
Good. Yeah. Has anybody tried any of those kind of techniques in anything you've done before? What kind of change approach have you taken when trying to help people with the Power Platform?
Hi, this is Ajit here.
Hey.
No, I mean, like we more or less give them some guidance with regards to first we need to give them an understanding of what Power Platform is, what its capabilities. Like everyone just jumps into it thinking that it's a very low thing and can be achieved with that. So we need to at least give them a heads up, like everything cannot work with a low code. Sometimes you might have to write, and maybe you even need to give them some kind of a small sessions for an head start purpose. This is what you need to be looking at. These are the high level items, line items that you should start looking at one by one and then go on to the big thing. So, and also like just give them an idea, like try as much as you want and fail, basically, to understand how it works. So those kind of things. Just to think, just to let you know, I just came without any expectation to this session, and I really liked your slides and things and your approach. Thanks for that.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I think one of the things you said there was really, really important, just getting people to try, because we learn so much by finding the things that don't work as much as we do finding the things that do.
Yeah, they should have a first-hand experience before they could suggest something to someone else. Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, Stuart, you've got your hand up.
You asked the question around how we introduce people to Power Platform. One of the things I like to do really, really early on in projects is ask people to help solve a really simple business problem. So it could be something as small as the printer's always running out of paper. That's one of the ones that's came up in the past. Use a process that makes sense to them to demonstrate what the platform's capable of. We did this with a farmer about 3 or 4 years ago before COE was even a thing. And within about 2 hours, he'd built an app that basically all it did was order him new printer paper. But
Fantastic.
Because he understood that process, he understood the pain points, he understood why it was, for want of a better phrase, a pain in the arse to deal with. And at the back of that, like within about 3 or 4 months, he was customizing Dynamics 365 field service by himself.
Amazing.
It's cool to get people into stuff that they understand. Like if you try and talk people through processes that make no sense to them, they're like, well, it's just more confusing. But really simplifying it down to something small like that, I've had a lot of success with that in terms of COE activities, and reuse that concept with all sorts of different customers as well.
Yeah, that's a really cool example. It's great if it's one of their own personal pain points, isn't it? Because they've got a vested interest in trying to solve it.
Yeah, and they also talk to people about it as well.
Yeah,
like if you build something for someone that they want, they'll tell the whole planet about it within 10 minutes. If you build something and give it to them, they're like, oh, it's another thing that I need to do in my day. That's not what people want. They want less things to do in their day so they can get on with doing the job.
Absolutely. Excellent example. Thanks very much for sharing. Hey, Charlie. So you got your hand up too.
Yeah, hey, Simon. I just thought I'd say a few things. Great presentation, by the way. I've actually learned a few things around how to use illustrations and, you know, how you present. So I like that. I have experience with sort of helping different levels of people through Power Platform. So I'm just going to shine a little bit of light. Anyone who's getting into Power Platform or any low-code, no-code tool, I always say, like, don't get overwhelmed by how much there is. You know, Power Platform is massive. It's evolving. It's hard to stay up to date. It's virtually impossible to stay up to date with the entire suite. So I always make people aware of that. You know, find your niche. Even at the top level, you know, some of the best Power Platform developers out there, they have their own niche, right? So, you know, that's what I always give people advice. Find your niche, find where you want to excel in, find what you want to be up to date with on the roadmap. Right? I can't keep up to date with every single feature, every single roadmap in every single element of Power Platform. But that's why I have focus areas. And then, you know, I make sure that other members in my team have different focus areas. And as a team, we come together. And that's why I really like one of your images around how you enable your team, how you build that community internally. Also, it's that community outside as well, which, you know, like us lot, we're a community. Best way to learn from me was jumping on the forums, making someone else's problem my problem, and, you know, fixing it, learning, because sometimes the best way to learn is on the job, right? Yeah, you can do some great courses and stuff, but actually learning on the job. So if you don't have great use cases like Stuart just explained, Go and make someone else's problem your use case, is my other recommendation. But yeah, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Oh,
Hey,
Panos, go ahead.
Hi, Simon. Yeah, great presentation. As Charlie said, I think it was really, really useful. So I mean, I'm working with a university at the moment, and they've decided to use their own internal team to build their systems out. And I was kind of brought in to kind of support them in terms of understanding and adopting best practices and stuff like that, because they're quite a junior team. So I've kind of championed the whole ALM piece for them, getting that all set up and working from scratch, from the ground upwards. And I think what worked in my case was basically taking it really slow initially and ramping it up over a period of time. So as I say, it was a very junior internal team, and they had very limited prior experience of any kind of software development at all, really. So I took a very soft approach and kind of led by example on that. And now I'm finding myself, almost a year in, and we've got very junior people talking about things like branches and solution layers and automated deployments and source control and stuff. So it's fantastic to see, that kind of stuff. It's the team has come a long way, and I think it's all about really enabling them and supporting them through that process. I'm just taking baby steps, I think, most of the time. So that's worked really well for me.
That's so cool. What a great story. That was the bit, although it was nice to see kind of solutions and things that people built, I really love that people journey, and watching them and helping them along that piece, and just see their confidence grow, see their capability grow, and really trying to champion them within their organization as well. That's the bit that really floats my boat. I love it.
Absolutely, and I think it just grows organically, right? As more people embrace it within the team, it's just so nice to see everyone really kind of running with this thing and taking it places. Really nice.
Excellent. Well done. It sounds like you've done a fantastic job there.
It's been quite refreshing, actually. I've had a few conversations this week. This is a bit off topic, I suppose, in a way. There's people I've spoken to that have kind of discovered Power Platform in their role and really struggled, over months and months and months trying to get help, reaching out to the community. Can you help me? Because they don't know how to fix a problem, or they've created something that's become quite complex and then doesn't work. I don't know if there's any kind of solution to that, really, if the motivation isn't coming from the top down and it's coming from somebody who's kind of accidentally become a citizen developer and then is stuck in an environment where there's no motivation. I don't know if you've got any thoughts or advice for anybody in that situation, other than kind of get a new job.
Yeah, well, I guess I've seen it as well. As these things grow, there's some managers or leaders who get it and want to kind of pounce on it and help encourage people, and there's others that really don't and try and shut it down. And I think forming that community and finding your tribe, finding the people who are also really excited about this stuff, is a real nice way to kind of let off some of that steam and make it a nicer place to be. But the way that we can then help is to shout about the great things that these are doing, because if somebody isn't supporting their team and they're hearing these amazing stories that other people across the organization are really kind of excited and inspired by and celebrating too, that can be quite an influencer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things about the Power Platform community is it is a community within businesses and outside of businesses, and even businesses in competition with each other get together to help and share. Yeah. So I feel for those people that are just on their own, quite lonely, frustrated.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, pulling them into the bigger community is a great way to do that, because they'll realise that they're not alone, and there's a great big network of people who are happy to help in all sorts of things, be they technical or otherwise.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. But yeah, that was my final point. Apart from, I have actually been in a situation like the shirtless dancing man about 12 months ago.
Was this on holiday after a few
It was a
cocktails
gig
or something?
in North Wales, and it was
Ah.
it was pretty chilled. Everyone was sitting around having a beer, and then this group of girls just got up and started dancing, and they go, "Come on!" There was like a big move from us in the end.
Fantastic! That's really great.
So I'd save that for the end. Okay, well, thank you. That was really good, really good. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, see you soon.
Hello,
Yeah.
thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.